Hello. So today I want to talk about how to recognize evil because it's very difficult nowadays. And in the past, we have seen perhaps the Second World War and the First World War, in which people was incentivized to just start huge massacre, a lot of chaos, everything broke about havoc, and then they fought each other till exhaustion. So how is it possible to recognize if we are going to the same place? Uh, let's say when I start to, yeah, when I start the podcast, I was not feeling pain, and then I'm targeted again. So the pain is induced, supposed just to let you know that it's happening. I have no reason because I think they're gonna allow me to say what I want to hear, but still, this is a kind of evidence for the future. People might think that I work for a government, or people might think, let's say, that I support certain government or other. I'm in Australia, but truly, I don't know who is the government that is targeting me, and I never work for the government, covert, in any shape, way, of form, or form, except in Colombia, in a small town. I work putting the Christmas lights, and I was 15, 16. If that's considered work, if that's considered working with the government, yeah, then I'm guilty of putting some Christmas lights for a small town council. Yeah, okay. So there is something called necrophilia. Necrophilia is not about necro, death, and philia, love for death, or anything to do with bodies, dead bodies, or anything like that. It's actually the attractiveness towards things that are inanimated, things that are not alive. So sometimes things could be decaying, things could be dying, or things simply are not alive. And there is people who like to see things that are alive way more over things that are alive. So it means that if there is someone that will prefer in the future have sex with a robot that doesn't have a life because it's not conscious, not saying that all robots won't be alive, but certainly there will be robots that are not conscious over humans. Yeah, and this person prefers to love something that is inert, then that's necrophilia. Yeah. So it is important to distinguish this branch of psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud discovered several things in in humans, and he was a pioneer in the psychological science. He was technically the creator of the social sciences. Sorry, he has helped a lot of social sciences, but he is the creator of the psychological sciences. He discovered things that still relevant today, like the unconscious, or perhaps that we learn our attachment characters from our carers. At that time, they used to believe that certain things come from father and mother, but nowadays it's about who was the carer. Um, so Sigmund Freud also discovered the ego. The ego is a kind of reaction or kind of doing that we exert depending on what we think other wants. If other people want us to be, I don't know, skinny, then we become skinny because we want the others to see us in that way. We want to dress in certain way because we want to be seen in that way, and we actually care how we are seen, then we do it for ego. And there are social norms as well in which we could comply, but not necessarily put too much effort in it. But still, for some people, it's more relevant than others, certain stuff. So people could start to have things because they think that having a lot, let's say, car, expensive things, or maybe there's even people who think that because they dress, I don't know, something old that's old, then they will be considered humble, or someone who is dressing. It's not about only things that you dress, yeah, but it's as well how you behave with people. It's about several things. So I'm not going into what ego is healthy and what is unhealthy, because it depends on which society you live. It depends on several factors. So it's not about one kind of ego is better than the other, but simply the ego is not what you are, is what you are doing for others in society. So ego is not necessarily God, but there are kind of egos that can be threatening to others. So there are kind of egos that can be seen as maybe not desirable. So there are egos that could cause damage, etc. But well, that was one of the features that Sigmund Freud discovered. And psychoanalysis just progressed, and then we have another kind of psychoanalysis that was coming from Carl Jung. So Carl Jung was very much like it in the United States because he talks a lot about individuality. He talks about being by yourself, which it matches perfectly the economic system. Before that, Freud said that a team of people who he delegated of the, let's say, Freudian Institute were the only ones who will say that psychoanalysis will be exactly what it is, and anything else that doesn't comply with what those persons say won't be deemed as psychoanalysis. We have that the creation by Sigmund Freud of that institution meant that another views were shut down, and people start to think about the biology of the brain as one of the factors. That was Erich Fromm. Another person like Carl Jung started to talk about other conditions, and that was what became psychology nowadays. And we have, and many other people start to, let's say, break away from Freud, and even her own daughter, Anna Freud, and they create different schools of thought, etc. So nowadays we have also different techniques like we got neuro-language programming, eye rapid movement, we got psychiatry, neuroscience, psychology, etc. There are different ways in which our brain affects us. But Erich Fromm was interesting because he is one of the persons that talk about something that today has not been has not become conscious, or in other ways has been denied, is the situation that we as a society have not recognized that the society itself has a kind of mind. It means that we unconsciously try to suppress that as a society. And that's why many people that is public figures cannot talk directly about things that they could be talking. So the conversation always becomes political, because whatever is their goal is not being achieved. Whatever is the goal of other person that has more political power is the limit to which they can reach in their conversation. It means that some information is made unconscious. And Erich Fromm assumes that there is a kind of consciousness and unconscious of the conglomerate of society. So we are talking about the collective mind being conscious or unconscious. And this kind of collectiveness was also shown very clear in the Nazi era in Germany. Germany just came out from a war, the First World War, in the 1919 started, and by 1939 Hitler rose to power. And we can see that Hitler followed a pattern of necrophilia that is described by Erich Fromm. Let's say people who will experience this character of necrophilia will perhaps put order first over growth of living things. They prefer the order of the things that are inert, or assume that people doesn't have life to put order in them, over the growth of the people. The growth of the people means to develop their human powers. And human powers is to develop your cognitive capacities, your physical capacities, the power to be loved, the power to love others in your society. These are kind of powers that only the human has, are related with happiness. The kind of powers that we have is the capacity to feel confident and in having integrity of who we are, and not feeling powerless because we don't have things. It means that some people will prefer to have a lot of mansions. I mean, I would like a mansion. Don't get me wrong. I would like to have a huge house, not necessarily with swimming pool, but place in which maybe I could listen to music, I could do pottery and invite a lot of people and have nice conversations. But not necessarily I would like to have a mansion that has extraordinary things, toilet of gold, and maybe no just one car, but 2, 3, 4, etc., and 10 cars. Yeah. Not necessarily saying that every single person that has a lot of commodities is a person that doesn't feel integral and secure, but there is people that do not feel secure unless they have an expensive car, a mansion, etc. They don't feel confident unless they are having possessions. Persons who have the character of necrophilia, according to Erich Fromm, also prefer control over spontaneity. When something is spontaneous, let's say like a puppy, a kid, or you have certain kind of, like, I don't know, a cat anything a ferret, anything that is domestic. Animals that we kept domestic, we like them because we come home and regardless of how we feel, they are always the same. They are happy to see us. The animals just come to us at any stage, just make us happy. They give us love, and that's spontaneous. Some people will prefer to have control, and it's not control over the animal. You can teach an animal certain things and be kind of, let's say, a good trainer in the sense that you will be probably saving a lot of items that could be destroyed, otherwise if your dog starts to destroy everything in your place, or let's say maybe your dog starts to bark on other dogs, and you wouldn't like that, so you train the dog, yeah. But if you have the character of necrophilia, then you will prefer always to control over anything related with is spontaneous in nature. So this kind of character was spread out in the Nazi regime, maybe because they just came out from war. People had to work after having a lot of traumas, and they had to work for pennies. And I mean the sanctions that were put over Germany made them so hopeless that when they found someone like Hitler that would say that, hey, we are better than that, give them a kind of dead hope, a hope that wasn't going to an end of prosperity, but the hope was to kill an enemy in order to have the prosperity, which is different. It's not going towards a place that can be better. It's about things gonna be better after we finish our enemy, and that's a lost hope. So there is also the theory of shock, in which it's supposed to happen after a war, and because of the trauma and disorganization, after so much of this kind of chaos and entropy, the first thing that people attach to as a system is whatever comes to give some kind of order. And what happened to them is that they kind of adapt to the sanctions, they adapt to the new political regime that was more imposed by other nations, and the politic developed in a way in which these people choose a leader that will precisely reflect what they have suffered before. So this is a kind of trauma that was never overcome. When the trauma is not overcome, then there is somehow a kind of repetitive pattern that's related with transcendence. When we can transcend our mental states, then we start to experience humanity in another way. So controls over spontaneity is perhaps this kind of false hope that Hitler gave to the German people. And Hitler was the middle of politics. He was neutral. Not saying that he was neutral politically. He posed himself as the neutral party, because the main parties there were the conservative nationalists, and in the other hand were the communist and socialist, and the National Socialist Party was in the middle. So this is a political strategy, just to pose neutral in a place where the poles are mainly extreme in politics. And well, he technically created a kind of centralized economy. Yeah, this centralized economy primes control over spontaneity. Then people will develop what the Nazi regime would like to develop, and other things that will develop by other people that would like maybe to experiment or be creative wouldn't develop. One of the strategies for which the Greeks were successful in war was their creativity. So Greek is conformed like in a kind of by a kind of gulf that is shattered, but also by many islands. Yeah, and these many islands will have different culture, different dialects. They were also trading the whole time. So it was impossible to have control over the information and production of information in the old Greece. That might be the reason for which democracy developed, because in that way they could keep the islands and other parts of Greece by a consensus that will become a dialogue between many places that were different. And having that feature, they allow people to develop different kind of technologies. So people was able to develop different things because they were coming from different backgrounds. Even if they were living close, they were not living close enough to have the same language and the same information. Sometimes, let's say, in an island, people wouldn't go out to another island in years, decades. They will just stay there. Maybe there will be trading. They were like, let's say, things that will be fine in an island and things that wouldn't be fine in another one. Maybe it was people in mainland that will never go to certain islands, and when they went there, they saw something that other people in mainland couldn't see, etc. So they were traders, and they are also somehow experts in creativity. So this spontaneity allows a kind of flourishment. The spontaneity allows to be, yeah, and control, or the need of control, is a kind of way in which we probably want to feel something, but not allowing factors of how the world is in nature that has certain kind of sporadic nature. So let's say in the Nazi regime, this idea as well in the Italian regime under today is one of those days in which they doesn't allow me to speak too much, but this will make sense in the future because this kind of technology also can block your brain, your ideas. But so I'm talking about the Italian regime. I'm talking about fascism. Okay, and so these AF push words that are in mine, I'm conscious of it, so I don't put it out. But Mussolini, who was the dictator in Italy. He also was a supporter of fascism, and fascism, one of the best descriptions that exist is the night of other realities. So if you were in the Nazi regime, you will experience just one reality, the one that the Nazi regime wanted for you. If you were in Italy, it will be the same. Yeah. When you have this kind of idea running in politics, you can spot it as fascism. Yeah. So today, this is a way of recognizing evil. Another way to recognize evil is to see that technology primes over life. Technology primes over nature. Technology becomes something that we develop. We transform the matter that is still inanimate as alive, and then we prefer to have an object that is not alive over something that is alive. But don't get me wrong, I prefer my computer over a flower. Yeah? I mean, I cannot exchange my computer over a flower. But do I think that my computer is more valued than all the flowers in Melbourne? No. Do I think that we should choose a world in which computers exist and no flowers? Not necessarily. But when you are in a position of power, and especially talking about humans, yeah, you prefer technology to develop over humanity. That's a way to spot evil. So it means that order over growth, control over spontaneity, and technology over nature, or things that are alive, becomes a pattern of evil. So things over people means that we are preferring lifeless things over something that can be alive and spontaneous. If we talk about systems in which communication in a form that is alive doesn't exist, where little joy is experienced, and I mean not addiction, but joy, then might be witness a kind of destruction. So it's joy when a kid, I don't know, stay hours playing in his phone, or when a teenager is in social media hours. Well, that's something to solve another day. Well, Erich Fromm talked about also the malignant narcissism. Yeah, that's very interesting because it has not been, let's say, acknowledged by current psychology. And this is very interesting. Current psychology or modern psychology has not acknowledged that Erich Fromm made a distinction between what is self-love and what is narcissism. Because in the past, if you were someone who would, let's say, stay with friends in a party and you say to them, no, I'm not gonna drink, I'm not gonna smoke, I wanna take care of my body, and I will not share with you this drink, this smoke. That will be called in the old days narcissism. It is described by Erich Fromm later on as self-love. And it's not being egotistic, it's not being self-centered. Yeah? As someone like Zizek says, the best way in assert yourself is to say, I would prefer not. I would prefer not to do that. Yeah? To say yes is technically easy, but to say no becomes more difficult. So, traits of a narcissist personality, according with Erich Fromm, and Erich Fromm was a philosopher, sociologist, School of Frankfurt, and he stayed in United States during the Cold War. He went to Mexico and then moved to Switzerland, where he died. He talked about people having rage when being criticized, lack of empathy or genuine interest in others, grandiosity, and extreme sensitivity, especially when the person is contradicted. This is similar to today's narcissism. Group narcissism talks about the unconscious collective. The unconscious collective in this kind of group narcissism is related to racism, fascism, and extreme nationalism. Nationalism is an interesting device because, let's say, you could live in a place. Let's say I live in the valley at the top of a mountain. Let's say the mountain is, it's a place that is elevated, but then somehow has a little valley. I forgot the name of that in English. In Spanish it's called meseta, but okay, whatever. So this place, let's say, could be good for the people to develop culture because they might have everything that they need. They don't need to go downhill, and being there, then the relation with nature would give them certain features in which they relate to each other, and they will create culture. Let's say in Machu Picchu, in Peru, when you go to Machu Picchu, you will see that there is a permanent current of water between the big rocks. So the air goes through, and because the rocks are inside the mountain, then the temperature of the rocks is the temperature of inside the mountain, making a difference of temperature and creating condensation in the way that the air becomes condensed water and drips in the earth. And this will allow the people in the Machu Picchu to develop certain kind of agriculture. And today, the plantations and the terraces and kind of balconies can be seen today. They used to grow several things at the top of the mountain. So this is a kind of culture that developed, and let's say these people will call themselves, yeah, we are, I don't know, the ones who live in the mountain, yeah, and they not necessarily were people who would say, oh, we are nationalists, because the states were not formed, yeah, maybe the limits and let's say the land, the finished land in which the other group starts, were not limitations for them. So the borders were not marked at that time. They might have seen themselves in a different way. Today we have societies that fight for those limits, push those limits, and align those limits. And this hasn't changed. But in the old days, maybe the limits were not that sharp marked. And because the culture develops depending on what happened inside the limits, we can talk about societies that are not simply the ones that develop a culture organically, but societies that can develop themselves their own culture. Yeah. And let's say, yeah, the Chinese develop their own culture. Western world develop their own culture. We have Russia. We have the several countries that are more hermetic than others and develop their own culture. And well, my point is that nationalism comes to be a kind of whoever is the citizen of inside these borders is a national, and the main culture can be exploited to nationalism, creating I'm proud to be something that those outside the borders are not. I'm proud for this reason, and I'm not proud to be outside the borders for this other reason. So that comes with a problem. And I don't have to dig too much in that. That comes to the problem to say that because I was born in these borders, we are better than the others outside the borders. Let's say one of the persons that studied violence was Anna Arendt. Jewish. She was Jewish ethnically, not religiously. She discovered that she was Jewish. She was kind of old. And she's one of the best modern psychologists that could have ever existed. But she also existed in a time in which was hard for women to say, hey, I think better than you, that you are a man. But she's probably the first philosopher that was a woman, or one of the first to appear in TV. She was also young, and she went to the United States when she was young. She talks about, she made a study on violence, and she concluded that nationalism should not exist in order to have peace. It comes with a problem as well. If you are not nationalist, then you wouldn't have people proud to fight in the case you are invaded. But that's a really complex problem that we're gonna maybe talk about in another time. Erich Fromm also described sadism as the desire to exploit others, the desire to humiliate others, the desire to feel better. Sadism as not feeling pleasure from helping others. Sadism, comes to be sadism comes to be the unrestricted control over other beings. That's similar to malignant narcissism and necrophilia. Which the point here is of this technology that I had been expressing in other videos relates with this kind of sadism. As I say, I have not committed any crime, I cannot go to a place in which I would say, hey, you know what happened? I've been targeted by a technology. It is provable, maybe it is provable, but I need to do certain kind of exams if I have any kind of nanobots, nanoparticles, or antennas. It's difficult to spot exactly what will be the transmitters and receivers in this kind of technology. Also, if you could even know all the kind of electromagnetic waves that are coming around me, it is difficult to process that through an AI that is already trained to show exactly what is being in my brain. And we know that a lot of people complain about can stalking, incel, Havana syndrome, and being targeted people. So this technology goes beyond that, because it means that if I could feel my nerve along my arm, if I could feel the nerve on my eye, just feel it, not necessarily something painful. Sometimes they can cause a lot of pain, and it can be anywhere, but you can tell that this pain that is not necessarily a muscle, is actually can be even diminished, very small. I feel it, and it tells me a kind of degree of precision to which this technology can be kind of directed. And it means for me that the whole nervous system can be hijacked. I don't know how, and I don't want to I don't want to spread any rumors, but let's assume is enough, or it can be somehow precise enough to isolate parts of the nervous system, long parts of the nervous system. So it means that somehow there must be a distribution of something that is so homogeneous that it feels that they can isolate certain things. It means also that if these things are in my brain, probably all my brain can be hacked. I'm serious in that. Even, well, nowadays people won't believe it. In the future, that will be normal. You probably will pay some money to hack something in your brain, or you will pay for a machine that will tell you how much you have hacked your brain to learn something, etc. But nowadays, this addition that is happening is that technically I don't enjoy privacy. If this technology can also insert dreams, and this technology can also send sound to my nerves, to the auditive nerve, if this technology can extract ideas that then I see reflected in other places, technically I don't enjoy privacy. Yeah. And I seen shorts and videos in which people talk that some kind of cognitive technologies can beam an idea to people in a contained, let's say, area. So it means that one area in which people is, could target, the technology could target the people in the area to beam a specific idea to all of them. And it makes sense. It makes sense for me. I won't explain how, but it will make sense for people that has been targeted. It will make sense for people who has experienced maybe strange things, Havana syndrome, maybe this. There are certain people who have experienced psychosis, go to the hospital, leave, and they never experience again psychosis in their life, but they might understand certain things about how this technology works. Nowadays as well, they're talking about, I mean, that's the interesting point. We were talking about how society doesn't recognize that there is a conscious and an unconscious conglomerate of society. This collective conscious or unconscious is present, but technically all is unconscious. And one of the evidence for it is to say that we classify certain group psychological disease. Yeah, so we are talking about groups that experience something as a kind of phenomena in which everyone just align with the other, thinking the same thing because they experience the same environment or because they have no explanation, and then it is a placebo for which they develop all the same symptoms, and then we classify this in the current psychological definitions that this is a group psychological disease. So this group psychological disease is the recognition that there are group behaviors. But it's just the behaviors that helps the economy somehow, help the explanation of something. It's not the group behaviors that will be used for, let's say, people be in solidarity when they could search for people that is target and voice some concern over a few people that is less than 1% of the society that has been targeted with this technology. Yeah, that's a kind of group consciousness that is not developed. Then we assert that certain things can be group behaviors psychologically, but it is a kind of unconscious or negation that actually society can be conscious, and it reflects just an unconscious reaction of society, meaning that we are not masters of our society. We are not deciding for our society. Someone else or something else that as well is unconscious is just driven mainly by not animal instincts, but I will describe that to kind of undeveloped human instincts, something like I will describe that like, well, right now is the technology blocking what I want to say because it's a term very interesting. It's primitive instincts. Primitive instincts is what distinguish humans from animals. The primitive instincts were before we develop consciousness. Yeah, and we talk about several thousands of years, if not more. Sometimes we find pictures in caves. These pictures, try to make those pictures yourself. Try to replicate that, and you will find that the person who did that had certain skill that would have not been developed if the person was not consciously developing that skill. Yeah, it means that the person learned how to draw that. It means that the person probably made many of those drawings in another place. It means that the person choose or try somehow things that will attach better to those walls. It also means that he developed its own characteristic artistic let's say expression. Yeah? And it only can be achieved if you are conscious of yourself and the environment. And some of these pictures date more than 1,000,000 years. So primitive instincts are before that time. We are talking about animals. Primitive instincts sometimes are used by humans for justifications. And these disguise other feelings like love, concern, and some attitudes that will be for which others will be better off. So, well, this has been a deep, let's say, video so far. In another book that is called To Have to Be, I should have taken it or prepared for this video, but okay, I cannot see it in my library at the moment. Well, to have of to be is simple as you are because you have things, or you are because doesn't matter wherever you are, you still being yourself. Simple as that. And well, some people think I feel like I've been a slave. If I'm telling you that I might not have privacy, it's because probably they are training some AI models with my thoughts, my brain, my speech. Yeah, and I'm not allowed to do certain things. I'm not allowed to concentrate unless I'm doing these videos. And sometimes sometimes people will see me on the street, but if I'm not with someone, or sometimes if I'm with someone, I start to experience this. And the voices also have had certain patterns, yeah. But every time I try to break away from this cognitive war in several stages, always they have tried to push me down in wars, with using wars techniques. So this relates to experiments of how the future will be related with cybernetics, how cognitive war will develop. This will also be related, which already is happening, with people breaking away from solidarity and the possibility to isolate someone in plain sight, and meaning that someone can be hidden and isolated from the others in plain sight. It means that we are going towards the atomization of society. If the atomization of society happens, then we will have different kinds of races in which some people who will have access to technology can enhance themselves way more than the base of society that wouldn't have, let's say, the access to it. So education in the future will not be about who has the best teachers, but who has the best technology. Education in the future will be about who has access to the best AI models, who has access to the best models that can adapt to themselves, and who has access to the institutions and teachers that will have this AI. gonna be more complex as well, because if this atomization go to an extreme, then people will not send their kids to a school in which kids will have the opportunity to interact to each other, but they will probably do that at home, and the kids will sit in a computer and they will talk with a model in the metaverse, instead to be receiving that kind of teaching with another peers, exchanging life as another, let's say, as we came from nature in group with another peers of their same age. So this might be possible, might not be possible. We don't know the limits of human nature. Technology is always pushing the limits of human nature, and one of the features of human nature is flexibility to the change, adaptability. So we are talking about, so far, three important features of human nature. You are born free, and then you have the possibility to be anything. Human nature as the possibility to grow, the possibility to develop, not the opposite, that will be to die. So for some reason, the only animal that commits suicide, which doesn't lead to life, is humans. I mean, sometimes you will find animals that, in order to defend their kids, or their children, then they will fight a monster that is bigger, and the monster can kill them, and it can be considered a kind of suicide. Yeah. But yeah, one of these features of humans is to be flexible and adaptable. So ideally, humanity will adapt to a state of continuous change, because it's possible. The only thing that wouldn't change is the main social fabric of reality, which will be technologically, for which I think blockchain is necessary. But we're gonna talk probably about that in another video. If anyone wants exactly that, yeah, just put it down, and I will try to focus on that. But so ideally we wouldn't be vegetables, or we wouldn't be unconscious beings, because with this technology, technically, you could change the brain of a kid as soon as it's born, or even before. And there are no laws about this. There is not knowledge about this, as far as I know, in the academic branch, in the philosophical branch. And I'm sure whoever thought that it was ethical to do this to me just because I'm still alive and have certain commodities, if, let's say, some people thought that it was ethics to make me ill and force me to every single day take antipsychotics that will slowly kill me, to take antipsychotics that will put my mood plain, that will change my speech, but in which also with this technology, every day I will face continuous challenges, and for years I will complete almost a decade being target and experience this technology. Whoever thought it was ethical or they thought it was ethical because maybe other countries might be doing it in a more harsh way. They thought that it has to be done without consent, and they probably thought that it was ethical, tried to push me towards hate of society, or tried to me creating scandals, whoever thought it was ethical for me to be isolated from main society in ways in ways that people don't understand, and that includes the stigma of mental illness and other things. Whoever thought that this was ethical definitely never experienced what I'm experiencing. And that's a fact. I don't think they have experienced my life. Very unlikely that they have taken antipsychotics to know what the hell is that. They might have read what is that. They might know a notion of it, but they don't know how I feel to take every single day a pill knowing that I should not be taken. And knowing that that pill has to be taken, I have to take it because otherwise I won't be allowed to sleep. And if I'm not allowed to sleep as well, my brain degenerates. If I take it as well, it degenerates and also slowly produces another illnesses. I'm trying to do exercise as much as possible and trying to try to have a better diet, especially because in 2018 I discovered that this was a technology, but after being in paliperidone, a medication that takes away your consciousness, a medication that you forget that you are alive, and suddenly I will see my hands and I will think, oh fuck, I'm alive, and then immediately I will forget. Then after being in that medication for over 6 months, I'm going to a softer medication, and then again experience psychosis because they were trying to link me with some kind of scandal, in the sense that they probably thought I'm gonna be a scandalous focus in create something that will appear in the news. And if they thought that that was ethical, I think they're wrong. I think that I could do this or develop better ethics in how this should be used. I think if, let's say, I was targeted because they thought I was a criminal, they had also plenty of evidence in which they could prove that they had done a mistake, and they did not reverse the mistake. Instead, they had been going on for years, and that's what I think is the definition of evil, and we have to be aware of that. That's very important. Imagine how the people who was supporting the regime of Hitler was experiencing. Imagine what the people was doing. Imagine how it was possible to create that conformism. If you are a person who is a realist and you think that the past could repeat and things are possible because they happened in the past, then you should pay attention, because you might consider to think that it's possible to have a fascist regime. Yeah. Now, this indifference to life is a way to recognize evil as well. And Well, Erich Fromm talks about maybe people think that is normal, and he described that as the pathology of normalcy. A pathology of normalcy is defined as deadness as accepted as normal. Um, Erich Fromm also developed different kinds of characters. Erich Fromm talks about the formation of characters depending on our experiences. He talks about perhaps the revolutionary character, talking about revolutions as something that flourishes and creates life and transforms something to the betterment of everything. So we can say things such as Nikola Tesla being a revolutionary. We can talk about let's say, not just inventors, but people who has been in the arts, able to transform society. So we talk about revolutionaries as, I don't know, comedians making politics. We talk as revolutionaries as maybe people that stand up to say this is not right. We talk about revolutionaries to people that have the character to know that they are creating with love. And it doesn't mean a revolutionary, for example, like people who will take guns and will create their fucking revolution and I don't know, something like that. Because revolutionaries of that kind, when you ask them what happened the day after the revolution, they never know what to say. Revolutionaries who say, let's change the whole system and create a new one. You ask them, okay, what happens the day after the revolution? They don't know. This is what happened technically in Cuba. This is what happened in the Russian Revolution. This is what happened in China. But China developed in another way, anyway. During the Mao Zedongs, they experienced a lot of hardship, but then they start to reform in another way. But it took decades, yeah. But the system that were created out of that follow the authoritarian character. But we are talking about the revolutionary character. The revolutionary character is not the one that, as I say, is not the one that make most of the countries communist. Let's say one of the the revolutionary character cannot be associated with war. There is another kind of character that is not the revolutionary, but the rebels character. The rebels character is capable to use violence for destruction. The idea that you will rebel, fight, because killing the other is the hope of tomorrow. That's one of the rebels' character. So this is not a distortion of what is considered revolutionary, but it's rather the definition of what should be a revolutionary. And this go against most of the, let's say, Marxist literature, and this goes against the idea of the revolution as a good thing that brings freedom. So the revolutionary really creates, and the rebel destroys. Yeah, let's say you want to do a kind of, if you want to be a rebel and be a leader that will lead other people to destroy the system by violence, and you don't know how the next system gonna be, it's like, it's a complicated situation because it's really complex to create a new system, or it can be simple. At the end, it's about political will, but usually these kind of characters are related with creation and destruction, and hope, and false hope. So one of them is also the false consciousness, in which people might be led to a revolution that afterwards they realize, holy shit, what we have done. We are not living better, we are living worse, and we won already the war. We already achieved what we wanted. We wanted change, and we made it for worse. That's related with false consciousness. And this authoritarian character also is a character that tries to dominate, and the preference that, always the attractiveness to others' submission. The authoritarian character prefers to be in a hierarchy structure, and I understand that many people like that because sometimes the structure comes as challenges, and there should be a distinction there that should be sharp, because maybe it feels like a game, but dependence in hierarchical structures is something that always will happen in humanity. Let's say we go to school and we have teachers, and there is already a hierarchy. Teachers compare with the students. The master is the one who gives, the student receives the knowledge, and there is a relationship, someone who has knowledge, the other one who doesn't have. So not necessarily, let's say, dependence on hierarchical structures is a feature of authoritarian character. The feature of authoritarian character is as well acquiescence. Acquiescence in front of the truth. Yeah. So this is the same. The acquiescence is translated in different language differently, but I mean acquiescence to the submission to power without questioning, and that happens through violent means. I mean, sometimes you have to do it because otherwise you're gonna be violent, and if you are someone violent you have no option. And the people doing that will prefer that submissiveness, and that's exactly what happened to the Nazi German. All the people was acquiescent to the regime, and the regime create one reality for everyone, and that reality almost destroyed the German civilization, and we're gonna watch out for that. So it's important to think about this. If you, let's say, are in a hierarchy and you like hierarchies and you like the structure of power, it doesn't mean that it's something bad. I think there are, as I say, there are other features that might show evil. And one of them is the fear of freedom. The fear of freedom is, let's say, it's complicated, but the fear of freedom is something that we will experience in every single society of modernity in 2025. And you are not free of freedom when you have a revolutionary character, and because maybe someone prefers to do the right thing in the sense that they break away from a structure that is malicious. And the freedom is also the freedom of being afraid to live, of being afraid to love, of being afraid to be ashamed of being ourselves, of the free of asserting out ourselves as different and unique, the freedom of saying to others, I would prefer not, the freedom to create and not destroy, the freedom to not be condemned by others' judgments. Yeah, the freedom to distinguish that others exist with me in the same space, but judgments of others don't affect who I am, because I am. And if I'm not, then it's the others who shape me. So the authoritarian character follows a rigid adherence to rules and systems, and the preference to have their certainty is the character who prefers certainty over anything else, and relates with rigidity as, let's say, some bureaucratic systems. But again, bureaucracy is not bad, and being a bureaucrat is not bad. The bureaucracy works automatic as a machine, and the bureaucracy could make really good things for society. Some people prefer that because it brings also, let's say, a job, who brings stability, a job who brings certainty. Some people will prefer to be in a structure that will bring this kind of bureaucracy as something that is organized for the good of society, and an advanced bureaucracy will work in the way in which, even if people doesn't know that the bureaucracy is working for the good of people, the bureaucracy works in that way. It means that a bureaucratic system is evolved when people doesn't know the goal, or they could not know the goal of the system, but the system itself works for developing the human powers of the citizens. So it's not necessarily something that will make, bureaucracy is not bad per se. Bureaucracy is something that develops in every single system. Let's say if you think about, I don't know, I will press that I would like to hear a song in let's say in the music app that I will use. When I press play, that signal goes sent to a database, and the database makes a process in which looks where to look for that song, and after that place is found, it searches for the album, the artist, and whatever finds the song, and then redirect that to my phone, and my phone converts that data to data that is auditive. And this is a process. Bureaucracy works in the same way. Yeah. But sometimes bureaucracy can work in the way that could exclude others, in a way in which there is no feedback, because maybe people create a kind of system because they don't want to face questioning, or that will create discomfort for them. This discomfort is part of the authoritarian character and the desire of certainty. So black and white thinking, intolerance for ambiguity. And it's not intolerance of, let's say, being in an ambiguous situation. It's the intolerance of uncertainty. Ambiguity is not used two sides only, black and white. Ambiguity means that the possibility of anything, or the situational state of possibility. Yeah. So this is more or less what happened in the authoritarian character. Fromm was the third generation of the Frankfurt School of critical thinking in Germany, and he was one of the first ones to understand what happened to the Nazis. Also, we have people like Anna Arendt and another. There are a few other second generation philosophers from the critical school of thinking, which developed, let's say, even a kind of checklist to spot fascists and Nazis, etc. And not many people from that school accepted Erich Fromm, because Erich Fromm was considering himself as neo-Marxist. Why neo-Marxist? Because he critiqued Marx, but he also understood that Marx was right in certain things. Yeah, Marx discovered that there are social classes, and it doesn't mean that there is only two. It doesn't mean that the bourgeoisie and the proletariat are the only two classes. No. He discovered that there is the bureaucratic class, the managerial class, yeah? And nowadays, those classes, sometimes they are called blue collar, white collar, I don't know, green collar, whatever, it's all that. But when we talk in those terms, we are talking about classes, yeah? And that was coming from Marxist theory. and that's a kind of today is the usage that exists. In the past, I mean, it was easy for Marx to discover this because we had in the past the novels, the non-novels, and the rest of the people. And let's say if you see social classes serve always as a kind of a structure, let's say in India they will use the hierarchical system as well, the caste system. When the Spanish came to South America, and well, the whole Central and South America, they also create classes in which there will be the Spanish, those from Spanish blood born in the Americas, and those who were mixed with the natives, and the natives, those who were mixed with the black people and the black people, and they start to create different hierarchies. But hierarchies is a feature that always has existed with humans. In a conscious society, hierarchies might develop in a different way that is not related with power. Let's say it will be related with a hierarchy of knowledge or a hierarchy of effectiveness. Some people call these technocracies. Technocracies is difficult because not technocracy can be achieved, and also technocracies come with different kind of problems themselves. That has been studied. I'm not gonna go into that, but a conscious society will create other kind of structures. So yeah, we have also an attachment between the rebel character and the authoritarian character, and it's the love for destruction. So Erich Fromm talks about, he wrote a whole book on destruction. I'll try to see if I find it. Okay, I should actually look that book and have a video about just that book. But this idea that the humans behave like animals, and this idea that we have animal nature in us that doesn't distinguish us from animals, and this idea that the primitive instincts and the primitive feelings are the ones that rule over us instead to us ruling over our nature, because what makes us humans is the ability to suppress the reptilian brain in such a way that we could make consciousness work for us instead to primitive instincts creating a reality. So it's the primitive brain is suppressed by the superior part of the brain, and that's what makes humans special, is to have mastered the primitive instincts and feelings. So a conscious society will be the one in which primitive instincts are not the ones who lead society. If a conscious society develops, you wouldn't have this problem in which I will be developing a society in which people can flourish without being naive enough to be attacked by an outsider. Consciousness is like fire, just expressed. And attractiveness to consciousness is a kind of attractiveness that exists as pureness. People feel attracted to the classical notes of classical music. This is a European music because these frequencies are in resonance one with another. It is Europe. This is European descendants because I don't know who was able to discover the phenomenon of synchronicity. And likely it has been discovered in our societies, but we cannot read all music, but let's say this alignment in which harmony and also this kind of resonance exists is a kind of beautiness. Beautiness as well can exist as something that is healthy. Beautiness can exist as something that is creative, new, different. And beautiness can exist in many forms. One of them being whatever attracts you to consciousness, which is a kind of knowledge. And consciousness spreads like fire. And consciousness is depicted in many, let's say, in many old texts as fire. Let's say, as I speak that, I receive voices telling me that we're gonna be hard on you. Interesting. And it's when I talk about consciousness. So consciousness is depicted as well in this Sisyphus myth, in which Sisyphus takes the fire from the gods and give it to the humans because he was loving humans, and then humans were able to be conscious and start to use the fire for cooking and decide as well to use it for war. Use the fire to keep themselves warm, or use the fire to destroy nature. Perhaps it's optional, as is kind of free will. When Eva took the apple was taken from the tree of knowledge, life and death. When Eva bit the apple, Eva became conscious because she gained knowledge and knew that she was alive and understood that she will die one day. When Eva looked at Adam, when Eva looked at Adam, Ada looked at Adam, and then Adam was an animal. So Eva felt pity. She felt ashamed of Adam and gave the fruit to Adam. So she gave consciousness to Adam. She took the apple and made Adam conscious. Then they realized that they were naked. And the realization of being naked is something that only humans can do, not animals. When they left the Garden of Eden, is because they don't live as animals in Earth, but they live in Earth as conscious beings. Yeah? And there is an attraction to consciousness. The serpent is not a demon. Actually, also, it is depicted in old text in many differences, but I mean, there are several versions. But Eva was created first, then Adam. So it means that Adam did not sacrifice a rib to create Eva. And yeah, Eva was the first, because men we cannot create. We cannot create humans. And there is a mismatch there, because usually men, we are born with all the ribs, and usually men are born from any women, and no human has been born from a man. Yeah? A biological man, regardless of how people might identify. But a biological man cannot be born from someone who is a biological man. Only can be born from a biological woman. And that's why they maybe thought about taking a rib. Maybe some scripts were flipped in which women will be deemed as a rib that is useless. Okay, that's my interpretation. And remember, everything that I say in this video is related only with my interpretation, my experience of life. Whatever I have simply taken of how life has revealed to me. And so we're talking about destructiveness. Destructiveness can now be read as something that humans do inherently. Humans might be destructive because we are unconscious, just like a kid takes the wings apart from an insect. The kid might do it because it's fun, but the kid might do that naively. The kid is not conscious. Yeah? The kid disrupts because he's not conscious, because he doesn't understand that is causing harm to an insect. The kids might bully another kids because they are not conscious of their aggression. And that's part of being humans. That's part of spontaneity. Yeah? That's something that is unavoidable. But with this technology that is happening to me, it's avoidable. So we're gonna start to be less human, because exists the possibility in which no kid will ever do an experimentation in which, let's say, will pull apart by curiosity the wings of an insect. It means not that the kid is conscious. It means that the kid, as soon as he's born, will be under control. And this is not something that is depicted in the Matrix. As I say in another video, the Matrix movie is part of the Matrix. It means that the movie was created for our reality. Yeah? And if you think it's very interesting, in the Matrix, they leave the Matrix to go into the cave. If you see the Platonic, Plato's allegory of the cave, Plato goes out of the cave to see the sun. Yeah. So, okay, so destructiveness comes as well as a way to rationalize justice, duty, and historical necessity. This is looking at the past and thinking that because in the past we were doing that, we should continue the future in that way. I talk about that in another video as well. That whatever is in the future cannot be new because it hasn't happened in the past. And people who create new things are the ones who, well, will have that passion of creation. Do they have, these people who likes to create, do they have opportunity in how that creation will be used? Oh, that's another question. But I do believe the people who developed the technology that is happening in me, they rather did not know what they were doing, or they didn't know that a person like me will be target, and they maybe didn't know that a person will be target. They probably were expecting something else, or they were doing it out of justice, duty, and historical necessity without realizing that they might put in danger the future, the justice, and the duty was a perception. So reason can be blocked under the authoritarian character. And reason and logic are different. If we talk about reason, is to be right. But right under truth and righteousness. And righteousness under the values that are virtues. Yeah? And those virtues are precisely things that are not causing harm. And reason is different to rationalizations. I could give you a manual of things that might make sense to you through rationalizations. Let's say outside might be a poison, and I tell you that poison should be killed because it's gonna damage the tree, and if the poisons damage the tree, we won't be able to harvest the fruits, and if we won't be able to harvest the fruits, our kid will die, and everything just because you didn't kill that poison. Those are rationalizations in which I find the reason of something through an allegory or through a rhetoric device that guide me to a solution or to a conclusion. These are rationalizations. It's not reason. Reason is different, and logic is different. Logic is contextual, yeah? I could use a logic that could be mathematical, or I could use a logic that will be, let's say, just physical and limit to, let's say, Legos. Because the Legos will have blocks that only can work in certain logic. Yeah, logic is one thing, reason is another thing, and rationalizations and another ones. Yeah, rationalizations is the way in which you create and connect neurons because some idea, but that idea doesn't has to be true. That idea doesn't have to follow a logic, and that idea doesn't have to follow reason. Let's say to believe that I'm superior to you. Yeah, maybe I'm superior to you because I'm the creator of this video and you are the one who watched. That's a rationalization. Yeah. So I'm not saying, in another way, it could be you are superior to me because you have more money and I'm poor. Yeah. Under that, let's say, logic of, I would say, yeah, I don't know, who has more money, then I'm poor, you're in a superior stage of power, and that rationalization doesn't have to be true. Yeah, because there are many things to prove. And what gives you the idea of superiority is simply the use of a logic that's not necessarily true, or a rationalization that was created with an argument that not necessarily is true. But okay, so yeah, now we go to the last kind of trait of the authoritarian character, which is conformity. When people is in a bureaucratic system and things start to happen in a way that they don't desire, they don't like, they dislike, or these things start to happen, but they love them, they love that because of the certainty, and there are illusions in place that might be perhaps racism, fascism, and it creates a kind of conformity that is not based in reality and doesn't create accountability. Then the authority becomes anonymous. And then we have these cases, scenarios in which things were done not because Hitler say kill the Jews. Things happen because there was an authority that is anonymous. No one ever heard or record, or no one ever testify saying Hitler said, and he gives the order to kill the Jews. And under that logic, we can say that Hitler did not kill any Jews, and he was not responsible. But that's the idea of anonymous authority. When no one knows who is the authority, but the system just works in a mechanic, bureaucratic way, and sometimes bureaucracies are very big, then there can be manifestations as those that we talked before, like perhaps the preference over machines, automatization over lives. Yeah. The preference of atomicization, or well, let's say the granulation of society, atomicization. Well, I'm talking about creating social units that are not connected with other ones, instead of developing the qualities of individuality. I'm talking about preferring people to be isolated instead to people developing themselves as individuals. Yeah. So we have this situation as well in the conformity that allowed the Nazis by people who will fear voice their opinions because they are not individuals. Then they are afraid to be themselves because I'm individual, you are an individual. Individual means that two different people. And to assert difference brings fear, making homogeneous everyone and creating a system in which there is only one possible reality, and that's the definition of fascism. Yeah. So the fear of difference or fear of standing apart from the group is the fear of freedom. Yeah. Okay, we have the substitution of public opinion for personal conviction. The public opinion is technically to repeat what is said in the main conversation. We just follow that part without questioning, and we are not able to voice our personal conviction. It's the negation of the self by ourselves. It can be done through many dispositives, psychological dispositives. Yeah. Let's say there are psychological dispositives in place in which, no, I don't know, I could say to you, well, you join to my cult, everyone has to have this style of beer. And if you don't have that style of beer, then you are a sinner. And if you are a sinner, bad things happen to you and you will be rejected by society, by all of us. You will be rejected by the group. So that's a mechanism in which I make sure that everyone follows my regime. And in my regime, if I had the power to do that, I'll do it for sure. As Zizek will do it too. Well, for those who like Zizek, that's a Zizekian joke. Okay, but the idea that I create a system in which everyone should follow this and reject the others, etc., is the idea in which I create an illusion and I create the fear for everyone to be different. And then we have the problem that people would not flourish, yeah? And people who might have been adjusted to that system will have the fear of being free. So this passive acceptance, the acquiescence and conformity is another of the mechanisms in which we can spot evil. Yeah. And well, in the market-oriented system that we currently have, that's a problem because we are in a point in history in which we are about to create robots that gonna work without protesting, non-stopping, maybe for years, for months. They just need to charge batteries and maybe adjust some parts and they will continue working. So we're gonna be overproductive. It means that we're gonna create so many things that otherwise we wouldn't, it's impossible for us to consume. And having an overproductive society doesn't mix well with the economy efficiency. So I'm afraid that this technology can be used as I'm using it. Technically, I receive money, I'm not working, and I'm just consuming. Yeah, and if this is a system that creates ill people, so the system can continue because there is a need for people to only dedicate their lives to consume, we have a kind of evil going on because this market orientation system is related with how much the GDP grows and how much it can be consumed, and is not oriented with any other marker of humanity, not any market of how can human life take its course without dying. And we know that simply we don't have enough resources. We know that simply climate change is real. We know that there are several reasons for which think that we are in a kind of historical juncture in which we might be similar to 1937, 2 or 3 years before the Nazis took power. So we have to think about this because it could lead eventually to a place where we don't want to go. Disconformity also surrenders authenticity for security. And security is the addiction of certainty and is pathological. The addiction for certainty is created as well systematically. And when we experience the fear of freedom, sometimes, let's say, we could finish university, and after university we could continue studying and feeling the emptiness of having too many options, feeling the emptiness that we could do everything, and feeling fear of it is the fear to be free. Therefore, we try to find a job that tells us what to do, to follow a career, to maybe continue, I don't know, certain path that is structured order for us. It's not a path that we decide, but a path that we follow. Yeah, it's not a path in which I will create something. I will maybe even take myself as an entrepreneur, but I will find someone who has a path for me. And when I say that, again, the voices tell me we're gonna have it hard on you, and I'm laughing, and I know I might suffer, but this might make sense for people in the future. Not now. So normalcy as a pathology. We try to not be different. We try to be adjusted to society. It's difficult to explore the human condition, explore what is the possibility for us to be, explore what our body is capable to do before we die, explore how much love could I give and receive, explore how much can I learn before I die, instead of how much can I accumulate in material things, explore how much do I need to be to feel secure instead of search always for security. Yeah. So the pathology of normalcy is to say that psychologists are talking about group illnesses, and these group illnesses are accepted And certain group illnesses, like people that is being targeted, it's simply not accepted. It's actually hidden by most algorithmic research and most, let's say, algorithmic searches engines. So this is happening to people. This is happening to me every single day. I have since a while, since January, everything changed. And I noticed that these changes come as well with the politics of the world. So some social illness are accepted. Yeah. So I'm talking about social illnesses like kids given certain hormones that are not, let's say, substantially necessary for them to have a purpose life. Yeah, I'm talking about kids that maybe feel different and they identify with being, let's say, a woman, whatever, and they are told you need to develop breasts. They are told you lack something, and therefore they have to take medication. Yeah? They are told you need an operation. Kids in that way are told you are not to be, you need to acquire, and you only can be happy and you only can be after you acquire certain things. Eventually there might be kids that will need hormones for another kind of things. Natural hormones can be something as taking melatonin, which is a normal hormone for sleep. Yeah, some kids might need it for certain reasons. But a kid that will need hormones because it's allowed support to change the body when it's not needed for its health, regardless of the idea that gender is, or the gender that he wanna be is the one who is not her or his body, is the idea that she's damaged, is the idea that she needs something from the outside. And the idea that to be another sex means that it has to have certain physical features. The idea that it's lacking something, yeah? And this might be a kind of social illness that is not accepted totally. Because as well, we unconsciously are choosing what is convenient for the time. We are not conscious to choose what is convenient and always have been convenient for us as experiencing the human condition. I leave it there. Okay, this was a long video.